Hi, I'm Peter Kavanagh, and we're thinking about Mark's Gospel chapter 4, the storm at sea, and whatever we can learn from this story that might help us think about the current corona crisis that we have found ourselves in. In the story, the disciples take Jesus in their boat. There is a storm. And a couple of thoughts here that I noticed. Number one is it says that their boat was filling with water. In my version it says a great windstorm, verse 37, arose and the waves were breaking into the boat. So the boat was already filling. It was being flooded with the water. This seems to me to be one of the main reasons why the disciples were so upset, because these were guys who were used to the water, but they just weren't used to having the water come into their boat. Now, just hold that thought. When I look around social media, I see a lot of charismatic Christians, and maybe others too, talking about the end times. Do these world events that we are currently experiencing, do they herald the beginnings, or are we in the midst of the end times? Are we in what some have called the Great Tribulation, or are we on the edge of it? And I get a bit concerned about this because there's only one group of people who might think that way. And let me just dare to suggest those are a group of people who don't normally struggle and suffer in this way. I noticed here that it was when the water got into their boat that they started getting all vexed. Some of you who have traveled widely, and I can't say that I have done that, but I've met many people as well as traveling a little. But those who have a global perspective and have gone to different continents around the world will know that the world is quite often a place of great suffering. Around the world there are struggles with famine and disease and plague, hardship. There are tyrannical rulers, and I guess in a Christian context there is severe persecution of the church in certain parts of the world. The truth is, in my own reflections, I don't know how you would feel about this, but in my own reflections, times like this make me just realize that actually I'm just a Western privileged person. And suddenly, problems that have been affecting the whole world to a lesser or greater degree have now shown up in my high street, or in my home, or now my church can't meet. Do you know around the world, outside of viruses, do you know around the world how many churches can't meet? Perhaps because it's illegal to do so. Possibly more churches can't meet than can around the world. But because it's affecting me, because my ship is not just a storm of the world, but now the water is making my socks wet. Now all of a sudden I'm wondering what's going on in this life. Now, that's not to say that people who have had easier lives should feel guilty about that. That's not my point. My point is this, that perhaps we should take time to reflect and be grateful that for the vast majority of most of our lives, there has been relative ease. I know people have different challenges, physical challenges, material challenges, mental health challenges. I'm not making light of those, but we have relative ease. Sometimes we might feel that we can complain because we have to have social distancing. Well, that just means that we live in a society where there's room enough to do that. Or we might think that it's inconvenient that we have to wash our hands all the time. But that's only because we live in a society where you can, right now, wherever you are, stop this video and go and wash your hands. You have the ability to do that. The water is right there with you. You don't have to travel for it. And so, as the water is getting into our boats during this coronavirus season, it's not that I want us to embrace the difficulty. It's not that I believe that it is a good thing. But it will be a good thing to be grateful that for the vast majority of the sways of the years of our lives, we haven't had these kinds of problems. And so as the water comes in, that's where we must have our faith in God. They wake up Jesus and he speaks to the storm, commands it to be still. And he says to them this, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have so little faith?" I wonder what you understand when you hear these words. Do you think Jesus meant, well, why didn't you use your charismatic powers to stop the storm yourself? Why did you have to wake me up? Where was your faith? Well, it's true that in the story of the demonized boy in for example, Luke's Gospel chapter 9, it's true that there Jesus felt that they should have been able to deal with that demonized boy and set him free. But in Matthew and Mark and Luke, there's no indication here that Jesus meant that they should use some sort of spiritual unction or anointing to stop the storm. No, it seems like his question is much more philosophical than that. Not where were your spiritual gifts, but where was your heart? Where was your faith in God's wonderful sovereignty? If God said we're going over to the other side, that is where